Today is day 1 of year 4 in Spain. So what's so cool about it is that this past week we celebrated Día de America in Oviedo. And it was the first time that I've gotten around to going to this parade. So while we talk about things that I've learned while living here in Spain over the last 3 years, I'll show you how Oviedo celebrates the Spaniards who went to the Americas and the Americans who came to Spain. And out of all the lessons that I've learned, I'll tell you the ones that shocked me the most. Keep in mind, this is my second time living in Spain. Asturias specifically. The first time I lived very near City Hall in Avilés. Now I live in the countryside. My perspective now is very much geared towards countryside living. First thing I want to talk about is setting aside money for the unexpected. There are often shall we call them fees for living in a village? Think for things like communal fiestas or celebrations or just gifts for people who live within the village. It's something that is always unexpected for me, but living here, eventually I'll get used to it. But I try and set aside money just for the fact that maybe somebody's birthday is coming or some celebration is coming and there's a dinner for the community, whatever it may be. I'm going to make sure that I have money set aside because it's always unexpected for me when it comes about. Another thing that if you're considering living in Spain or you live here and you've bought an older house, you need to set aside money for obligations that may not have been expected, such as preserving the historical features of your house. I have to replace the roof on my house and I can't use new tiles. It has to be the old style tiles that are on the house, and they are almost twice the price as newer tiles that could go on our roof. So you can come across things that are very specific to your home that you have to do. It's enforced by the ayuntamiento. I know our local police, I know when they come by and they are looking. They're looking for changes that are not permitted or changes that are not allowed in the area. So people who live in spaces like I do, there is public transportation, but it may not be as frequent as you'd want it to be. It's much better than what you'll experience in most places in the States. But if you want to have access without having to wait and without having to take a taxi, for me personally, having a car is important because of what I do. I'm going to all these different places and I want to have easy access to them. Some culture shocks that many people talk about, still siesta. Siesta in rural areas, at least in my rural area, is very much real. Shops close midday, governments close. And when I say siesta, they might not necessarily be taking a nap, but these places are closed. Even some gas stations close midday for siesta. And I look at it as everybody's taking a break, a lunch break. And that culture for me just makes so much sense. Everybody gets a break in the middle of the day. So you can eat your food and you can digest it. You don't have to sit at your desk like I was used to when I lived in the States. Another shock is Asturiano. Asturiano is spoken in lots of places. I recently went to a fiesta in Cadavero, and the mayor was speaking, and I was having a hard time understanding what he was actually saying. And I turned to my husband and asked him what was happening, and he said, I don't know, he's speaking Asturiano. Lo and behold, my husband doesn't speak Asturiano, even though he grew up in Asturias and went to school here. When it comes to property ownership in general here, there is so much paperwork leading up to the sale. When we got to the notary, it was actually very straightforward, much easier than mortgaging in the US. And maybe for me, it was much easier because I did buy this home outright without a mortgage. but leading up to the purchase was a lot of work. And for those of you who are buying homes that you don't want to live in full time, there's housing shortages everywhere. It's not something that I would do, and I wish fewer people did it. But if you plan on being here part time and you'd like to rent out your home when you're away, kind of like Airbnb style, just keep in mind you have to get approval for that from the government, because there's a shortage of housing and you'll need special licenses to actually do that. Our water comes from a community well, and because of where my house is situated within the community, oftentimes I'll get the sediment from the well in the water. So we've actually installed a water filtration system, so we don't see that sediment anymore. But before we had that filtration system installed, we would frequently see, you would most easily see it in the toilet where the sediment would start flowing in, and then it would sit at the bottom of the toilet. So a lot of the water comes from wells. There are also springs nearby that water can come from. So just keep in mind, it's not like in the US where you have all of this water treatment, which in my opinion is really bad. And then you go to the grocery store to buy spring water. Here you're drinking from the springs, you're pulling from these aqueducts that are underneath the ground. You're pulling from water sources that are underneath the ground. Is not collected at your door like it is in the US, and in some instances you can do a 10 to 15 minute walk with your trash or your recycling. For me, it's up a hill. And some of the most surprising things, expat community, they're very different. They're different generations, they're different backgrounds. I personally started pulling away from the expat community here. I started noticing people whose personalities I wasn't attracted to, and that's not anything on them. I just personally wasn't attracted to these people. The people that I've attempted to connect with, those are the people I see something in common with. So I've connected with them already. Maybe it's a loss for me because I'm not meeting new people in the groups, but I'm happy to be a little bit less involved in these communities and more involved in my local community here. And that way I can grow and integrate much more easily in that sense. For whatever reason, are interested in American politics. I don't know why, but they ask me and we have our conversations. And if you hear from my other channel, then you understand where I stand on most of what's going on in the US. And I kind of feel like right now, American politics is like looking at a football match. And when I say football, for those Americans, I mean soccer. And it's fun to watch. If you were on the outside, you would see that it's actually fun to watch, to see what's happening, who's going to win, what's going to happen. It's insane, everything. From the outside looking in, it's quite insane. I understand both sides of it, right? I have family who lives in the States, whereas I live outside, so I can see it from the outside perspective, but I can empathize with what's happening on the inside as well. One of the most surprising things about living here in Spain is the internet. Living in the countryside with the internet, there is broadband in my town, but not at my house. In a lot of rural communities, you'll find that the broadband was brought to the town, but the company that was paid by the Principado to install it in the rural communities, the company who installed it did not install lines to reach all houses. So me and some of my neighbors don't have broadband. So sometimes I become overwhelmed with uploading these videos. In the winter, it takes maybe 1 to 2 hours to upload one of these videos. But when it's high season and all the people are in town on their vacations, it can take 8 to 12 hours to upload one of these videos at home. Sometimes I'll drive around to find a really good cell signal and just sit in the car and upload the video that way, and that can take maybe 2 or 3 hours. But that's the experience I have. Now, my neighbors have offered me to use their broadband. I've attempted that. It hasn't worked out, and that's okay. I mean, could you imagine me showing up at your house 3 times a week to upload a video? I wouldn't want that for anybody. So that's not something I would do. But I've always been sporadic with my uploads, and that's based on how fast I can get the videos uploaded. On my other channel, it's more current events. So those tend to push Asturico channel back a little bit, but that's one of the biggest surprises. It can be shockingly slow. It can be quite unstable. For me, who has created a business that is solely based on the internet, it is quite a challenge, but it's something that I continue to work through and I work with. It's one of my biggest frustrations right now, and if that's my biggest frustration, I'm doing great. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the footage of the parade for Día de America in Oviedo, and I will see you again next week. I've finally started posting on Instagram, so check me out over there. Because I have 2 channels fed into that Instagram, I'm trying to figure out how to showcase Spain and showcase things your mom should have told you on there. What I'm thinking about doing is on my main feed is about Spain and what it's like to live here, and in the Reels tab you'll find the little things I have to say. Anyway, you can find me there, and I will see you here again next week, and I'll talk to you soon. You can subscribe here, or you can watch another video if you'd like. Until then, bye.